So in this Year 1 phonics workshop, we're just going to talk through some of the things we'll be doing this year and just giving you a brief overview of what phonics entails. So some of the aims of this video are going to be to highlight some of the misconceptions in phonics. For some of you, it might be quite a new concept. Some of your children might be coming home saying different words and phrases, and you might not be sure what they mean. So we're going to talk through some of that and just give you an idea of some of the things that do happen in phonics and some of the things that we don't learn in phonics. We're going to learn about some of the alternative pronunciations of words and sounds. We're also going to identify some of the different spellings of words. Many of them use digraphs which are spelt differently but have the same sound. So we're going to talk about some of those. We're going to also use things called sound buttons. So we'll show you a way that we break down words into their digraph, trigraphs, sounds, things like that. So that's something we use in school that you'll be able to use.
So, the Year 1 Phonics Check. It's a government scheme and it's held either in late May or at the beginning of June. So it's quite a long way off and your children have plenty of time to practice. So we don't want you to panic in any way, but it is an important test, I suppose, or assessment. And if the children don't get the required amount, then they are expected to retake it in Year 2. So we hope that most of them certainly will get the required mark in Year 1. The children are given 40 words to read. You will have seen a check or a phonics screen come home already. We have at least sent home, I think it's 2 have gone home already. And the ones that have been sent home are just practice ones, and there'll be another one that will come out in 2022. So there's always 40 words. 20 of those words are real words, and 20 of the words are alien words. The alien words all have pictures next to them, and the children are very familiar with these, and they love seeing the aliens. I've had questions before from parents saying, do the children have to say whether it's a real word or an alien word? No, they do not. It doesn't make any difference whether they know or don't know. They just have to read the word. Last year, as I've said already, the children had to read 32 words correctly to make the expected standard. And it has actually been the same mark since the testing or the assessment screen began many years ago. The words contain a range of digraphs and trigraphs that we've covered since reception. And the phases covered go through from phase 2 to phase 5. I'll talk a little bit later about digraphs and trigraphs and what is meant by those.
So one of the terms we use in phonics is something called a phoneme. And some of you are probably wondering, well, what is a phoneme? This is the smallest unit of sound that you can hear in a word. In a nutshell, phoneme means the word sound. But we just have to be careful within phonics using that word sound, because a sound could be anything. A sound could be the sound of a chainsaw, an aeroplane in the sky. Whereas the word phoneme is specific to the sound we hear in a word, hence why we use the word phoneme. So it's very important that we use the pure phonics sound. So for example, the letter N, when we would sound it out in a word phonetically, we would say N, not N. Same, for example, with the letter T. In phonics, we would say T, T, and not sound it out as T. So, for example, like B, K, W, things like that. So we tend to say, don't schwa. We don't want the R sound at the end. It's a very short, sharp phonic sound. A, B, G, D, and so on. So, for example, if we were to look at some words of how many phonemes you can hear. So, for example, in the word cat, have a think about how many phonemes you might hear if you were to break that sound down. So, for example, in the word cat, you can hear a cat, cat. So again, when you break the word down into phonemes, sounding them out, it helps them to blend a little bit more as well. So, cat, putting it together, cat. For example, in the word fish. Again, we have to be careful, because sometimes we can sound out the words individually. So, fish. Now in phonics, we tend to use things called digraphs, trigraphs, which we're going to hear about in a moment. And it makes it easier to blend the words. So for example, in that word fish, we tend not to sound it out as f-i-s. We tend to do it as a sh sound, f-i-sh. And the same, even in longer words, for example, the word screeching, we can sound it out individually, sk, r, e, k, I, n, g. But again, that they won't hear that as an E sound, so we tend to use things like our digraphs. Sk, r, I, ch, I, n, g. So again, when they put it together, hopefully they can hear the word would make screeching. Now, a grapheme, these are the written letters that when put together can represent that phoneme. So a grapheme could be one letter, it could be two letters, or it could be more. Now you'll hear us talk about things like digraphs and trigraphs, and hopefully this will explain a little bit more about what a grapheme is.
What is a digraph? So a digraph is simply two letters that represent one sound. There's a consonant digraph which contains two consonants, sh, k, f, or ch, w, and f. And there's vowel digraphs which will contain at least one vowel, A, E, I, O, and U. There are other digraphs, and the children don't need to know whether they are consonant digraphs or vowel digraphs. It doesn't matter. They just need to know what sound that digraph makes. And then we have split digraphs, which I'm sure your children have spoken about, where two letters are not adjacent. They are split up by another letter. Some examples there. We've got split A, split E, split I, split O, and split U. And I'm going to give you an example of each. So a split A, as in cake, a split E, as in even, a split I, as in pride, a split O, as in phone, and finally split U, as in cube. And we often draw this with either a rainbow going above or a little smile going underneath to show the split. What is a trigraph? So a trigraph is simply three letters making one sound. Some examples. We have I, I-G-H, air, A-I-R, ear, E-A-R, year, or and ire. So some examples. I, as in bright. The children often remember that one because of Mr. Bright. Air, as in fair. Ear, as in spear. As in pleasure. That is a really tricky one because it isn't always the sound. If you think of manure, it makes a different sound. This hasn't come up in our phonics screen for a long time. Hopefully it won't come up this year, but we do teach it to the children just in case. And finally, ire, as in fire.
So just to make things even more confusing in phonics, we tend to use things with alternative pronunciations. So many letters have more than one way of pronouncing the sound. So for example, the letter A, or an A, if I was going to do it phonetically, can be pronounced in four ways. I've got some examples of words here. So for example, in the word ant, we can hear that A sound at the beginning, which is our letter sound. The letter A makes an A sound. So we've got ant. We've got the word water, which can confuse the children a little bit because obviously it makes that O sound. So some words we teach them have a letter which will have a sound that is different to the phonetic sound. So, for example, water sounds like it's an O, but it's obviously a letter A. Then we've got the word alien, with that A sound at the beginning, which is the letter name, an A. So, alien. And then we've got a word, for example, like staff. So, the A in the word staff is making an R sound. It can get tricky sometimes. So, for example, in the word staff, partly because the way we pronounce words, it sounds as though the word staff might have a R, an R in it. So sometimes the children tend to spell the word S-T-A-R-F-F. So it's one of those tricky things where sometimes we would teach the sounds, teach the digraphs, the trigraphs, and some words are just a little bit of an exception, and we teach the children through that.
Okay, so I'm going to show you now how we get the children to use their fingers or their robot arms to word build, how to break down these words into phonemes. So if we start with the first one, which is pig, I would ask the children to show me their phoneme fingers. So they would go p, I, g, pig. Or robot arms, p, I, g, pig. And then the next one, b, oi, b, oi. Cow, k, ow, k, ow. And then that one down there, ch, I, k, ch, I, k. 3 phoneme fingers for chick. If we go over to this word here, further, it's f, th, f, th, 4 phoneme fingers. Next one, manure, a, n, y, a, n, y. 4 again. Extremely, x, t, splitty, e, y. Extremely, x, t, splitty, y. Extremely, that was 8. And finally, highest, I, S, T. 5 phoneme fingers, I, S, T. Highest.
So I'm just going to talk you through something we use in phonics called sound buttons. And we use these to help us break down some of our words into things like our phonemes, using our digraphs and trigraphs, which just help us to sound out the words and break them down when spelling them. So, for example, I'm going to use something called dots and dashes, which we would put under the letters. So, for example, if I was to take this first word, speed, I could break it down into my dots. S are the 2 individual phonemes, a s and a p. E is one of our digraphs that we've learned. So we know that that's going to be a dash because that's 2 letters put together to make a digraph. And a d on its own. E, d, speed would be our word. If I was going to have a look at the word slight, for example, slight, sl, so sl are our individual phonemes. We tend not to say sl, we break it down into sl. I would be one of our trigraphs, and I trigraph is one of the ones we've learnt. So with that trigraph, we would put together as 1 dash and a t at the end, slight. And we do one more example, got the word broom. So again, we don't tend to say a b and a r together as a br. We break that into b, br, oo as one of our digraphs, and at the end, broom. Okay? Slightly tricky concept. I'm sure as you practice it more, you'll hear the individual sounds within the words. So, for example, if I was going to write one more, let's do one more example together. Chain. Within that, I've got the ch digraph to start with. So that would be a dash, because that's the 2 phonemes together to make a digraph. I've got my A digraph. So the A and the I together make an A sound, which would dash, followed by at the end, which is our phoneme at the end. So dot and dashing the words
Okay, so I was going to, if you came to the talk with us, I was going to get you now to play this game. I was going to get you to actually show me how many phoneme fingers you thought it would be for each of these words. But seeing you weren't able to join us, I will do it by myself and you can have a go at home. So, first word we're looking at is this one here. These are all alien or nonsense words, rubbish words, sometimes the children know them as. Rubbish, alien, nonsense words, not real words. We're going to play phoneme fingers with them. If we start with the easy ones over here, look. This is probably page 1 on the phonics screen booklet. We've got s, a, t, sat. Y, a, d, yad. D, op, dop. If we look over here, we've got qu, a, m, p, quemp. 4 phoneme fingers. Ch, split o, d, chode. This one here, j, ow, n, d, e, ng. Jounding. 6 phoneme fingers. This one, f, split a, p, s, t, fapester. Next one, k, oi, d, a, l. K, oi, d, a, l. 5 phoneme fingers. That's a digraph. Final one, f, e, p, e. F, e, p, e. Free, plee, or free ply. On the phonics screen the government gives us, it tells us what we can accept. So it would let us know whether it was looking for free ply or free plea.
Now within phonics we often say to the children that the English language is very tricky to pick up and it often throws some curveballs to try and trip us up. And so for example one of those is about alternative spellings. So many words contain the same sounds but will use different letters to represent that sound. So for example we've got some words here containing some digraphs. For example we've got air, share, pair, dare. They've all got that air sound within the words, but as you can see they're all spelled differently. So within our phonics lessons we would pick that digraph. So for example we would take the A sound, A-I, and the children begin to use that and think about words with that sound, and then as the week goes on we'll introduce them to other ways of making that air sound. So for example they will learn that the E-A-R can make an air sound in certain words, and the same with split digraphs, whereby in certain words, adding an E to the end of the word can change the sound of the preceding vowel. You'd be amazed at how well the children really do pick up some of these concepts, but often we have to just teach them that certain words, say like your Year 1 common exception words, are words that don't follow necessarily the taught pattern. So it can become a little bit confusing, but phonics is a great way of introducing to some of these sounds and the different alternative spellings. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an idea of how phonics is taught in St Mark's and some of the terminology we use. Obviously it's a very whistle-stop tour, but it just gives you a brief overview of what phonics entails. In terms of things you can be doing at home, there's a great website we use at school called Phonics Play, and it's got lots of free resources on it, so please do have a look. Some games and interactive resources that are great to use at home just to reinforce phonics in school. Thank you very much.